No, that's not a good idea.
System. This was the model I got as a kid back in 2007. I had the white one and got so much playtime out of it. But f this system, because 2 years later, another redesign came out. The Nintendo DSi, released on November 1st, 2008 in Japan, with a North American release happening on April 5th, 2009. In short, the DSi was an improved DS with 2 cameras, but who cares because they got rid of the GBA slot. This was a big deal to a lot of people, and I gotta be honest, it was a pretty solid blow to me. But 2009 Scott still traded his trusty DS Lite in for a black DSi. In my opinion, it was still a worthwhile upgrade simply due to the fact that it added so much functionality to the system. Cameras were the big selling point, but to me, it was cool simply because it almost felt like a Wii in your pocket. The overall presentation just felt so similar to the Wii, with the way the various apps and games were laid out, the music playing on the home screen. The DSi even had an online shop similar to the Wii, which sold DSiWare games. While the DSi shop was recently closed, all the games minus 10 select ones can be purchased on the 3DSi shop, so it doesn't look like some apocalypse or anything is gonna happen. DSiWare always left me feeling a bit empty though. Much like WiiWare, a ton of garbage was thrown onto the service. Sure, some stellar titles were on there. Shantae Risky's Revenge, Cave Story, Dark Void Zero, but there sure was a ton of trash. Nintendo charged like $2 each for calculator and clock apps. Like, come on. WarioWare Snapped was a criminally short WarioWare title that used the cameras and had you batting your hands around to play micro games, and that barely worked. Dr. Mario Express was a solid Dr. Mario game, but it didn't have online play, so that was a bummer. But at least Flipnote Studio was awesome. It was a really great little animation tool. Photo Dojo was so cool. You took pictures and turned yourself and friends into fighting game characters. There was definitely fun to be had with some DSiWare games, but there just wasn't a ton of heavy hitters. And I was also always bummed they never had a virtual console for the DSi shop. Like, come on, you took away the GBA slot, you should have had a virtual console to resell old handheld games. Outside of the internet functionality, the DSi had terrible cameras coupled with amazing software. All the edits you could do to your pictures were awesome, and you could also mess with audio recordings via the DSi Sound app. Once again though, a new charging cable is used, which is a mega annoyance. Now if you hate the idea of a handheld system being handheld, Nintendo released a variant of the DSi a year later, the Nintendo DSi XL, launching on November 21st, 2009 in Japan and March 28th, 2010 in North America. They weren't kidding, this is in fact an XL version of the DSi. If you want larger screens, then by all means, the DSi XL is for you. It has a glossy coating on the outside and came with a fountain pen. Other than that, it's literally just a bigger DSi. The XL systems were marketed towards the more hardcore players with the Nintendo 3DS line, but the DSi XL? Just take a look at the colors we got. Burgundy and bronze. These things flooded retirement homes. And those are all the DS models out there. And in terms of which systems hold up best today, I'd say anything from the DS Lite onwards. However, I think all the variations have great feeling controls. The DS Lite has a bit of a softer, squishier D-pad, and while that sounds bad, it actually feels really nice. The DSi is much clickier if you're into that sort of thing. You can play DS games on the 3DS, but if you want an original DS model, I'd say go with the Lite. The DSi's exclusive features aren't too awful compelling nowadays, and the lack of GBA compatibility makes the DS Lite far more useful. Plus, almost all of the DSi features live on with the 3DS. Cameras, sound app, DSiWare games, it's all there, so the DSi itself isn't too awful necessary to own these days. But now, we've got to talk about the games. No matter how you slice it, the DS had an insane library. I definitely say the third-party support was crazy impressive, maybe even better than Nintendo's. That's not to say Nintendo's offerings weren't good, but the sheer amount of quality third-party games was insane. I'd say the DS had better third-party support than the 3DS, however the 3DS had better first-party support. Looking at the big 3 Nintendo franchises represented on the DS, the results were a bit iffy. Now I already talked some Super Mario 64 DS, but in terms of original Mario titles on the platform, none were as prolific as New Super Mario Bros. It completely stole the show, was the game to get with the DS, and being the first original 2D Mario game in years definitely helped it out. While it was lauded as one of the best Mario games out there at launch, its reception has definitely went down a bit over time simply due to how many New Super Mario Bros. Titles followed it. Regardless, New Super Mario Bros. Worked. So Zelda kinda tried a similar tactic, taking 3D models and putting them in an old school format. Legend of Zelda, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks are top-down Zelda games with the same aesthetic as the Wind Waker. It looks fine from the top-down view, but when the camera comes up close to the characters, oh god. These Zelda titles definitely have unique controls. You're required to use the touchscreen and drag your stylus wherever you want Link to go. I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good as button controls to me. It doesn't feel like you are Link, it feels like you're leading Link. That's not to say they're bad, I'm just not a huge fan of controlling Link here. Everything else works pretty well. Metroid Prime Hunters had you move with the D-pad and aim with the touchscreen. Similar to Mario 64 DS's control scheme, it worked, it just wasn't ideal. It was a B-tier Metroid Prime game, but it was still impressive for the system, and even included online multiplayer with voice chat. But if you love everything about Metroid Prime except for the gameplay, might I recommend Metroid Prime Pinball?
Except for me.
It's better than you think. However, the games that really made the DS explode in popularity were definitely the Touch Generations titles. Games made for those people who don't know where the L button is. Big Brain Academy, Flash Focus, Crosswords DS, Personal Trainer Cooking, but the big one was definitely Braining.